Hello, today is April 18th, 2022. My name is Andrea Rodriguez Garcia. I am interviewing Yolanda Olivarez-Guerrero for the University Library Special Collections and Archives at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, hereafter abbreviated as UTRGV. This project is a partnership with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know, Mrs. Guerrero, that this interview will be placed in the University Library Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV and shared with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. If there is anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there is something you want to talk about, please bring it up and we'll talk about it. The University Library Special Collections and Archives will archive your interview, along with any other photographs and other documentation you're willing to share. UTRGV University Library will retain copyright or non-exclusive rights to the interview and any other materials you donate to special collections and archives at UTRGV. Because we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record you consenting to make sure you agree with our interview procedures before we continue. So I'll ask you a series of 6 questions. Please say yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each question. Do you give University Library Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV consent to archive your interview and your materials at the UTRGV University Library?
I agree.
Do you grant UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives right, title, and interest in copyright over the interview and any materials you provide?
I agree.
Do you agree to allow UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
I agree.
Do you grant the University Library Special Collections and Archives consent to share your Zoom interview with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin for inclusion in the Voices of a Pandemic Oral History mini project, which will include posting the interview on the internet?
I agree.
As you recall, we previously filled out a pre-interview form. We use this information from the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in a secure Voces server at the University of Texas at Austin. Before Voces sends it UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives, we would have stripped out any contact information for yourself or family members so that it will not be part of your public profile. Your public file will only be accessible at UTRGV University Library. The final 2 questions ask for your consent on what I just described. Do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in your public file available to researchers at UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives?
I agree.
On occasion, UTRGV Special Collections and Archives and Voces receive requests from journalists who wish to contact or interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone numbers or your email with journalists?
I agree.
Thank you for your consent. Your experience and stories mean a lot to us at UTRGV Special Collections and Archives. I look forward to what you have to say in the interview questions I will now ask. I am going to turn these lights because they're so bright. Make sure to give it a pause. Okay, we will now. It's recording, yes. Okay, we will now begin. So So the project question is, what are the stories and experiences of Latinos, Latinas, Latinxes in South Texas during the COVID-19 pandemic? So the purpose is to provide Mexican American, Hispanic, Latinos people accessibility to tell their COVID-19 pandemic stories in a meaningful way that results in quality digital documentation and institutional archival presentation. So students, academics, and others in the public may learn about, study, and/or reference these stories now and in the future to better understand how this pandemic affects the Latino community and potentially create relevant solutions. Okay. Mrs. Guerrero, thank you for your time. Like I said earlier, your stories and experiences are valuable to us at UTRGV Special Collections and Archives, and to our partners at the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin, because you are a high school English teacher, a resident of the city of Donna, Texas, and because you are a wife and mother of teenagers and adults. I know you have many meaningful stories and experiences to share on how COVID-19 has impacted these roles you carry out in your life. So before we talk about COVID-19 stories, can you please share with us a bit about yourself, who you are and how you wish to be known? Who is Yolanda Guerrero?
My name is Yolanda Guerrero. This is my 21st year as a teacher. I am a mother of 4. Their ages are 24, 22, 18, and 14. So at the time of the pandemic, they were 2 years younger, I guess 2-3 years younger. I've lived in Donna all my life. And I've been married I'm going on 25 years now. So it's a little bit about me. I never thought I would become a teacher, never wanted to go into teaching, but here I am 21 years later, and hopefully I'll retire in the next, I don't know, 7 years, maybe 7 to 8.
Looking forward to your retirement, I see.
Yes, definitely.
All right.
Kids are getting tougher.
Thank you. This first section of questions asks you to please share your stories and memories from when COVID-19 pandemic made its first impacts in December 2019 to about the summer of 2020. The first question I want to ask you, can you share some memorable stories about how you first heard or learned about COVID-19? The radio, TV, from your children or students, social media?
It was probably the news. At my home, well, I'm a journalism major. At my home, we watched the news every day. And so that's probably where we first started to hear about it. And then of course on social media. The day that, let me think, where were we? I do know that school let out on a Thursday. We were getting ready to come back Friday and we were gonna be out for spring break. And all of a sudden it was, don't go to work. And then I believe we went to a birthday party in Reynosa. And it was the last time we went for the next maybe 2 years. And then we were over there at the party, and then all of a sudden we heard, how President Trump was going to close the border and how we should probably leave, and we didn't know what was going on. So we left the party, and because we didn't know if the bridges were going to close or whatever. So then that's when we started to hear, more about COVID-19 and how it started affecting people, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Wow, I didn't know that story about, having to hurry to the border.
Yeah, because we didn't know we were going to spend the night. We usually typically we go over, spend the night, and we come back the next day. And we went for a birthday party, and my husband was like, okay, look, I don't want to get stuck over here. So, and we didn't know what was going on. There wasn't much on social media. A few, there was a few people commenting, but we hadn't heard any news. We hadn't, nothing on social media about the border. We didn't know the source was reliable. We didn't know, but we were kind of scared because it was at the very beginning and we didn't know how severe it was. At that moment in time, we didn't know what exactly was going on. So rather than spend the night and get stuck over there. We decided to come home that day.
Okay.
Yeah.
What were some early reports or rumors about COVID-19 that you remember back from 2020?
Just how it was very contagious. My husband worked through the entire pandemic because he works at HEB. It was very, what's the term that I want to use? I guess it was a little bit scary because you did hear how it was contagious, how you should wash your clothes, how you shouldn't talk to people, how you shouldn't touch anything. And I remember, like, leave your shoes outside, make sure you spray, use, a Lysol spray, a disinfectant spray. Don't come near me, make sure you take a shower, put your clothes. I mean, it was terrifying. You just didn't know how you would catch it. If you brought in a plastic bag, is it on the plastic bag? I mean, it was just terrifying. You just didn't know. So, I mean, those were the first things that I remember that, that we were like unsure of what to do.
Yes, I bet it was very scary having your husband, come in from work. Yeah. At what point did you realize this pandemic was a serious life-altering event?
Once we decided that we weren't going to go see the parents, like our parents, for safety reasons, we knew it was real because we wanted to keep them safe. Just trying to get them to stay put. They did have doctor's appointments, grocery runs, and just, trying to get everybody to stay at home and not leave, the confinement of your home to catch anything. That's when it became real. And of course, you did have people that were starting to get sick. And then, of course, we lost people in our family to COVID. So that's when you knew that it was real.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Do you remember what it was like for you during the stay-at-home orders in 2020? Do you have any stories from this time you could tell?
The days were long. Having 4 kids, having to stay put. My oldest was used to, go out. She would go out and about. It was very hard to keep her at home. To entertain them, to not, just to keep them at home. I mean, it was very difficult to stay put. Again, we didn't go see our parents. We didn't see anybody for a while because since my husband was out there, we were afraid that if he brought something to us, we were going to, spread it, and then it would cause, so we were very limited as to what we did. We didn't go anywhere. And we were not used to that because we're used to, being out and about. So that was very difficult. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Out and about doing,
visiting people, going out shopping. We also like to we take field trips around the valley, or we travel out, museums, parks, or whatever. So we were used to doing those kind of things, and then suddenly, we stopped. I mean, we were unsure of what was going on. Mm-hmm. So we didn't do any of those things anymore. It wasn't until about maybe the late 2020 that it was like, okay, I think we can go take a family field trip. So, we did like the Iwo Jima Museum. We went to Boca Chica. We went to a wildlife park in Westaco, like all in one day, just to like kind of, but we kept our distance. We didn't talk to anybody or whatever. Mm-hmm. So, things of that nature, I guess.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with me. Over the last couple of years, what news media, social media, or other resources do you rely on to keep you informed about COVID-19? What do you prefer these news sources?
Where?
What resources? What news sources? Yeah, where do you get your news from?
ABC, Good Morning America, or the nightly news. That's where I get mine. I don't read it. I don't read the newspaper anymore, but if I did, I would probably read the paper. But it's pretty much ABC News, and that's it. Maybe some social media.
Why do you prefer these news sources?
Why?
Mhm.
Like I said, I'm a journalism major. So at home, every day we watch the news. My kids know what's going on in the world because they watch. I don't know. So that's the reason why, because I'm a journalist. So I like to be up to date.
Mhm. All right. Can you share with me what do you understand about COVID-19 as an infectious disease and how you feel it's impacted society? Likewise, can you share with me what you don't understand about COVID and wish you could know more about?
So I do know that it is highly contagious. They didn't really know how to cure it at first, but they have found some treatments to make people more comfortable, I guess. I know that it affected everybody. Like if you were sick of something else, you were not top priority because you had all of these COVID patients. Okay, I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Yes, what do you understand about COVID-19 and what do you wish to know more about, understand more?
What else? I guess understanding like why they haven't been, I mean, they find cures for, I mean, we're so advanced in technology and science, I guess like why did it take them so long to find like the vaccines and things like that? I mean,
Do you feel your family has the same belief system as you do about COVID-19, or are there some members who take it more seriously or lightly? How so?
I know that at the beginning, my sister took it very seriously, and they ended up getting COVID, so, and then I do have those that did take it very lightly, and unfortunately, like we had a member lose his life because he didn't believe in like being safe and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I
mean, did they go early or during the pandemic, or
it was during the pandemic?
Yeah, the early months.
Early, yeah. And of course they had other underlying health issues, which didn't help. So
all right. So this next part asks you to share any stories about COVID-19 vaccines and any vaccination related stories you may wish to tell.
About the vaccine?
About the vaccine. Did you get a vaccine and any follow-up booster shots?
Yes. So because I do have adult children, my two adult children, my husband and I did go get it. It took a while for them to receive it because you know how they were having like tiers of people or whatever. So I was very fortunate to get it first. Oh my gosh, it was terrible. And then we went for the second doses, and then we went for the third doses when they were offered. So we were able to get those. But I mean, it was terrible to see lines and lines of people, wanting to get this vaccine, and then you would make it and they would run out.
Yeah, so my next question is, what was it like? Was it easy or difficult for in terms of scheduling and wait times?
I know that mine was easy because I did it through the district. And so they did allow us to go out there and get it. And again, if you had health issues, you were kind of like top priority. So that was easy. My husband and my two adult children, they had to wait, and then they went to, I want to say DHR. And I think they didn't have to wait too long, but they did wait a little while. And then of course, my two youngest got it when it was available. So it wasn't too long. I mean, my husband and my kids, my oldest kids had to wait a little longer, but one of them had already had COVID by that time. So I don't know.
So they had that protection that they said COVID people had.
But we're actually convinced because right before March of 2019, I guess in November, December, my husband was very sick. And so he's convinced that he had to have had, COVID. And so he's like, I think all of you were immune because none of you got sick, but I did. I don't know. It's like, we don't know because back then they weren't testing for COVID. But I don't know. My oldest, well, she was already immune by the time she got her vaccine.
Correct. So you've already answered. Can you share a memory from the place where you've been vaccinated or boosted? Were you hesitant about getting the vaccine?
Not really. I mean, I guess because we have all these other vaccines available, and it was what could be worse, getting COVID and maybe losing your life, or getting this vaccine and preventing, you losing your life. So, I mean, I don't know. My kids were like, "No, Mom, you need to go," and so that's why I went, because I knew that if I didn't, they would drag me over there. But that's the only reason that I went, because I knew, like, I mean, pretty much, what do you do? Do you take a risk, or, I mean, you're taking a risk either way, but do you get a little bit protected, or do you just go on without it and see what happens to you if you do get sick with it?
All right, thank you. So these next set of questions are going to ask you about how COVID-19 has impacted your life in the way of your career and your family. Ms. Guerrero, you have shared with me before that you have your children living at home with you, the adults and the younger ones. Has COVID-19 impacted your family life in terms of the way you interact with one another? Can you share with me some stories or examples of how you and your family adapted your interactions during the pandemic?
Well, we were already like a tight-knit family. My students find it funny that we eat dinner together every night, because they're like, "Who does that?" And my kids are like, "Who doesn't eat dinner together?" But there was a lot more going on in the kitchen, because that's where we worked out of. So one of my oldest was still going to college, and so she would do her work at the kitchen table, and so would the other girls, and so would I. So nobody was in their rooms. Everybody kind of worked out of the kitchen, and we tried to just be positive and be there for each other. I mean, my kids are already close to begin with, so spending that extra time really didn't bother them at all. I mean, every now and then, because it's like, "Oh, I'm so tired of you." But if you ask them, I mean, it was like any other normal day, I guess, for them.
That's nice. So how has COVID-19 impacted the lives of your two younger children and your two adult children?
So like the oldest kids, they're used to traveling. The oldest one, especially. So she kind of stopped going out of town. Less concerts, less professional baseball games, less professional soccer games. So it was very difficult for her to kind of stop all of that, suddenly, because she was used to going to traveling and doing these things. The other one, the second oldest, she really didn't go out. She still doesn't go out much. So to her, it was like, it wasn't a big deal. But they were more cautious when leaving the house. Hand sanitizer, masks, keep your distance, don't touch anything, don't talk to anybody, so that, they adapted. The little ones, well, I call them the little ones. They're not even little anymore. The younger ones, again, they pretty much didn't go on. They don't go out. So, it wasn't very difficult for them to stay put either.
More introverted?
Yes. Well, I have like half and half,
Okay. Let's see. You mentioned in the pre-interview survey that in the spring of 2020, you began to teach remotely. But how about the rest of the adults in your household? How did COVID-19 impact their employment, if it did?
My oldest got, I don't think, well, she wasn't laid off. Well, I guess she was laid off. She was working for, she was working for the Department of Justice, but it was contract work. So they kind of laid her off and they put her on unemployment. The second one was working at the mall, and every now and then they would close. So they would close and then they would go back to work. And then something else would happen, and so they would close again, and then she would go back to work. So it was kind of on and off. But they were, they were still receiving some kind of income. But it wasn't as difficult as many other people that, they didn't have work, didn't qualify for unemployment. So they were okay. Yes, they liked the extra money that was coming in before, but they really didn't need it much because they weren't going out, stuff like that. So they were okay.
Okay. So you shared with me that at one point or another, several people in your family became infected with COVID-19. How did you all navigate this time as a household? Did their infection occur during any of the COVID waves, like in the late spring of 2020 or the summer, right, of 2020? There was a whole summer here in the valley that was like everyone was getting COVID. Or how about in the winter, Christmas and Thanksgiving, there was waves then?
It was late summer 2021. Yeah, late summer 2021. My oldest was infected. I don't know. I think she had gone somewhere. Let me see. Actually, several times she scared us because she would occasionally go out with friends. And so every now and then, so-and-so got COVID. Oh my God. So she would have to get tested. And so we'd wait for her. And if she was okay and the rest of us were feeling okay, then life would go on. But that one time, she was really sick, real congested, real cough. So she was positive, and then we all tested, everybody was negative. And then I just tested again for fun 2 days later, and I was positive, but I was asymptomatic. So they put us in one bedroom, and we lived out of one of the bedroom, her and I, but we didn't let her out. If she went to the restroom, put on your mask, hand sanitize, and take the spray. So she already had a routine, and then, I had to follow the routine because I got quarantined with her. But they were very, the rest of the family was very helpful. They fed us, they brought us whatever we needed. So we quarantined the amount of days that we needed to quarantine, and we only left to retest. So that was good that we had the support of the family. I know that my sister and her husband were also sick, and my mom and I were the ones driving over there, dropping off stuff, outside, food, medication, so that they wouldn't leave their house. And so their kids were also they were separated from their mom and dad in the same house, but they were also separated. So I think that the support of the family was what kept us all going. Mm-hmm. And then she caught it again. The oldest caught it again. So she got it in August, and then I think she got it again in January, February. So same thing, she was congested, but she was the only one that time. So it was like, oh no, you're not coming out. You're staying there. So she stayed there, and the rest of us kind of helped her along. So
that's good to have that support, like you said. As we begin year 3 of the pandemic, do you see you and your family's life return to pre-pandemic normalcy? What are some family traditions that have changed since the pandemic began? Celebrations or vacations or anything like that has changed?
We did start traveling this past summer. So we travel every year. We travel plenty of times during the year, but we usually take a big vacation in the summer. So I know that the year that the pandemic hit, they postponed our visit to wherever we were going. And then last year we were able to take that vacation. So I think that we'll be able to slowly start traveling. As far as celebrations, we would get together as a family, with like my aunts and uncles and my cousins. We have started doing more of that. So before it was like, wear your mask. And now it's like, well, if you're vaccinated and you feel comfortable, So we just started doing a lot more of that now. But before it was like, we didn't see anybody. Like I said earlier, like we were just too scared, like, especially because my husband was out there and we don't want to get blamed for, well, it was, the Guerrero family who brought it, So we tried to avoid everybody as much as possible. But now we're slowly like celebrating birthdays. My mom turned 75 and we had a party for her. And she was like, no, because what if we get people sick? And it's like, no, Mom, things are opening up again. They can decide whether to wear a mask or not. We'll have hand sanitizer, available for everybody. So it went very well. Everybody was comfortable. So we're slowly starting to get those traditions back. I know the first Easter, we didn't celebrate Easter that first year. We didn't do any of that. And so after the year or two after that, then we started going back to like, celebrating all those holidays or whatever.
So what about like your first Christmas, like 2020 to this last Christmas?
My first Christmas.
What? The first Christmas of the pandemic.
So we usually go to Reynosa to make tamales and stuff. We spend Christmas Eve. We spend Christmas Eve there and then we come back Christmas Day. We didn't go that year. We didn't do anything. And so the following year, we made tamales at my house because my mom was like, no, we still have to do something for the girls. We can't just like not do anything. And my sister-in-law on my husband's side of the family was like, yes, you need to do it because I need somewhere to go and we need to do something. So we did. We made tamales, but that first year too, we didn't do anything because we were so terrified of, getting sick and getting other people sick. So we didn't do very much. It's not till the year after that we got together and it was just like 3 other people and, my family. So it was something that my kids had never experienced because they were always used to, we go to Reynosa, we come back and we go to grandma and grandpa's here, and we didn't do that. So they were kind of relieved that we actually did do something here that next year.
That's nice. These next set of questions are about working from home. So, Mrs. Guerrero, we are going to discuss questions that focus on your transition to working from home as an English teacher at FAR San Juan Alamo ISD or PSJA ISD. Just to get some background on your place of employment, what can you tell me about your campus, PSJA Southwest, Early College High School, and the community it services?
It services South FAR. It's a lot of the EL population. So there are a lot of Spanish speaking students that we not cater to, but that we teach.
Okay.
It's about a campus of like 1,700 kids.
Okay. Can you recall the procedures PSJ ISD took when you first began to work remotely in 2020? Were you required to attend meetings during that time? During the last few weeks of the 2019-2020 school year, how did you communicate with your students? At that time, what steps have the district taken to prepare its staff and students to deal with remote learning?
Everything happened so quickly. We did meet virtually. The students really did not have to log on. It was more of posting assignments and just making sure that they completed them. There was no way of knowing if the kids had electronic devices or not. So it was kind of difficult to to figure out whether they weren't doing their assignments because they couldn't or because they didn't want to. So I believe that's when they started talking about getting electronic devices for all the students. But it was tough because you really didn't know how to maneuver through the platforms that we were able to use, and neither did the kids because we had to practice with them. So it was kind of a slow start for the remainder of that 2020 school year because nobody knew, what, how to get a hold of the kids, how to communicate with them. And a lot of them didn't have the devices, the internet connections, and all that other good stuff that they needed for their assignments.
Mhm. And you attend the meetings during this time virtually?
Yes. Mhm. That's when we
So-
started using Teams and Zoom. We had to learn how to do all that communication through virtually.
Exactly. So let's jump to the 2020-2021 school year. How did you and your family's routine change once the new school year began? How did you navigate working from home while at the same time your younger children attended virtual school?
We pretty much had the same schedule. But again, everybody came to the kitchen. We all had a designated spot, headphones on, and everybody listened to whoever they needed to listen to, the kids. And I would teach at the other end of the table. But that's what we did. I mean, everybody already had an assigned seat, I guess, because the kids chose where they were going to sit. And we managed, that way. I mean, they would listen in to their teachers, and I would be teaching my own students.
All right.
And then, like for lunch, we pretty much had the same lunch period. So we would log off. I would make something real quick. We would eat, and then we would come back and continue the day.
So were you able to make a routine right away with your daughters?
Yes, because I mean, we knew that we had to eat at a certain hour because I had to be back online. So they knew that at a certain time period during the day, I was going to stop, make lunch, we would eat real quick, and then we would continue.
Okay. So what were the job expectations for teachers during virtual school? And were those expectations matched with the proper professional development?
We had to continue teaching the kids. I guess one of the difficulties was that the kids did not have to turn on their cameras. I know that the students that I had, they wouldn't respond. It seems like they would turn on their devices and they would just kind of leave them there. But we managed. We managed. I mean, you had to adapt to the situation.
Mhm. Let's see.
Did I answer the question? Or
No, yes, you did.
like, wait.
So how did working from home affect your work-life balance? Can you share some memorable moments from this adjustment? Did you feel like your employer allowed flexibility during this period of time when you had to work from home? Or was that needed for you?
They were very flexible. Of course, you did have periods of time when you didn't have the internet connections. So you kind of had to tell the kids, like, leave them a message. I'm sorry, I can't, I'll log in as soon as I can. Because that happened to me several times where the internet would go down. And so my kids even experienced it as well with their teachers. But it was pretty flexible. Earlier, we talked about the vaccines. I know that we were given the opportunity to kind of tell our kids, kind of make up work on your own. We'll continue tomorrow. And they let us go and take care of that. So the district was pretty flexible. And they knew that it was difficult for everyone. So it was kind of, how should I say? I can't think of the word right now. I mean, it was good that they were conscientious of the fact that we were going through the same thing that the kids were going through. I don't know if that makes sense.
Mhm. Yes, makes sense. Um, so by fall of 2021, now we're moving to the next school year, what steps had PSJISD taken to prepare its staff and students to deal with coming back, to campus?
Well, they had like the mask mandates. They provided some supplies, hand sanitizer, masks, the little traveling, the shield, temperature checks, surveys, if you had had any symptoms and things like that. They started quarantine students and staff. So they did take pretty good measures. I mean, overall, I guess the best that they could.
Describe how the transition back to in-person teaching has been for you.
It was a bit difficult because you were used to being in your home. You had an hour lunch. You were able to prepare, whatever you wanted to eat here at home. The transition between classes, you had like in the morning, you had 15 minutes. In the afternoon, you had another 15 minutes. So you had that time to kind of like, take in a deep breath or whatever. Whereas on campus, you're on the go, and you do have your conference and your planning, but it's very different when you have like those two breaks in the morning and the afternoon. So it wasn't too bad, but also it was difficult because I had to wake up earlier because I do have a 25-minute drive. So that was another thing that affected like my work schedule, because now I had to wake up earlier to make sure that I had enough time to get there. So that was also difficult. And then in the afternoon, it was the same thing. 4:10, 4:20, we were done, versus 4:10, 4:20, I'm already packing up or doing extracurricular activities, and I get home later. So that was a big difference for me, at least.
Yeah, I bet. So now we're gonna transition to classroom related challenges. So now let's talk about how this pandemic is affecting your work in the classroom. Mrs. Guerrero, you've been at your current employer for now a number of years. And in the last few years, you've been teaching retester students. Can you tell me about the students that you work with during a typical school year?
Compare this year with previous years?
No, your typical school year. What are your classes consist of? In the last few years, you've been teaching this retester groups.
Variety of attitudes. Behavioral wise, they're all different. Some are very motivated and some are very not. Some are very low and some are high. But then you have those that you see progress during the school year. So, their abilities vary, I guess.
Okay. Have you seen COVID impact your teaching in the classroom? For example, when were those impacts first experienced, and how has COVID-19 impacted your teaching practices at the start of the 2020-2021 school year and 2021-2022 school year?
How has it impacted my teaching?
Yes, your teaching. Do you feel that it has impacted your teaching?
I think so. I know that I used to work a lot closer with the students. They used to do a lot more collaborative group work. I used to go around the classroom, and now I'm kind of, I kind of hold back because you still are not sure, who's asymptomatic or not. So I've noticed that it's not one-on-one anymore. Well, it is, but it's more at a distance. We should be able to put them together so they can learn from each other, and you can't. I mean, you can, but you don't want to take that risk either. So it's been very challenging to do those types of activities. I feel. I mean, I think other teachers do have them in groups. And sometimes I will say, work with somebody sitting next to you, but I try not to, because I don't want any of the students to feel uncomfortable either, because I really don't know how they feel about the whole situation.
Mhm.
So I know that's been very different. That I can't see myself, working directly with them as close as I used to. That's been different.
Were you concerned about the effectiveness of remote learning during that 2020-2021 school year?
Yes, because of the retesters that I had. Let's say I had a class of, I don't know, 16 students. I would only have 8 log on, and out of those 8, I only had maybe 2 participate. So it was a struggle. I mean, it was frustrating because you would ask questions and none of them would answer. Every now and then they would answer in the chat, but other than that, you didn't know whether they were there or not. And at the end of the year, they had to take the STAR test. So it was really difficult to tell who was there, who was not listening, and whether they were, whether they were actually learning anything, for this test that they had to take. So that was very challenging because of the type of kids that I had that school year.
So do you recall your school district's announcement that it would return to in-person instruction in the fall of 2021? And how did you feel about it at the time?
I do remember I had mixed emotions, but I felt that it was time for the kids to go back. As a mom, take hand sanitizer, make sure you wipe your desk, wear your mask, but I felt that it was time for my kids as well as my students to go back, because they do need that socialization. I mean, they can't be, expected to know how to interact with people if they don't have that ability to do that because they're just at home. So the feelings were mixed, but I was kind of glad that we were able to go back. And I knew that if the students were sick, then they would be sent home, and they would advise the teachers and the students and the staff. So it was a little bit comforting knowing that they were going to do that for us.
Okay, that's good. And we already talked about the kinds of policies that PSJISD enacted in response to COVID-19, right? You mentioned temperature checks, the sanitizing, the shields, and all of that stuff. Thank you. So what has your school district done to encourage its staff and students to return to campus in the fall of 2021 and beyond? Not just disinfecting measures, but also vaccine incentives. For example, I read on the local newspaper, The Monitor, that the district is giving students gift cards for showing proof of vaccination. Did they offer anything to their teaching staff or the rest of their staff?
Yes, they did. I don't remember the amount, but they did provide an incentive. And it was easier if you went through the district vaccine clinics. It was easier to get compensated for your vaccine. But I know others had to wait a little longer, or they had to submit other proof. But for the most part, yes, we were given, I don't remember how much the stipend was. It was a little bit, but it did help. I believe it was like $300, yes.
Yes, and they also granted I guess it was like a second paycheck, instead of the 12 months, they gave like an extra, a bonus. I don't know if you remember that. Yes.
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 So much has happened that, I mean, kind of.
I know, but so that extra, it was like it matched the salary, I believe. And as long as the teacher remained or the staff member remained in contract the entire school year, they would keep
Yeah.
that money. And then if not, they would keep their last paycheck.
Correct.
District. Okay, since schools returned to in-person schooling in the fall of 2021 with limited or no options for online learning, do you consider this school year typical or challenging after returning from a year and a half of online learning?
It's very challenging. I know that my team and I used Google Classroom. It's a lot easier to kind of add assignments on there so that you don't have to print anything. And the excuse before was, well, I don't have a laptop or I don't have internet access. Well, they don't have that excuse anymore. Everybody has a laptop. Everybody has internet access at school. And now the challenge is that the students don't bring in their electronic devices. So if it's not one excuse, it's another. And they seem to think that they don't have to do anything or any assignments, any work. They don't have to put any effort into their classes. It feels like they just think, oh, if I show up and, just sit there that, I'm going to get a grade, I'm going to get credit. And well, it doesn't work that way. And I think that they're slowly realizing that, but it's taken a long period of time for them to react to the bad grades. And I keep saying, y'all don't want to end up in credit recovery. Yeah, miss, yeah, we do. It's a lot more fun. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I don't know what my kids are thinking. Well, especially the ones that I have. And I'm like, you're already here. You might as well do your work. You have your laptop or you can do it on your phone. And they just won't budge. So I don't know what happened to them between these past 2 years that I don't know if we just made it easy for them to, sit there and get a grade. And so now they feel like, oh, I can just come to class and receive credit when, in reality, they need to be completing their assignments. So that's been very challenging.
Wow. Okay. So final set of questions. This last section asks you to share any stories you have about this pandemic and their response by local, state, and national elected officials. Feel free to respond or pass on any of the questions. Do you feel satisfied with the local response to COVID-19 in Hidalgo County over these last 2 years?
Do I feel satisfied?
Yes.
I think so. They too also took measures in limiting the amount of customers in a store, making sure there was a mask mandate, offering vaccine clinics when they could, trying to report on the number of cases, trying to keep everyone safe. So I guess I was, fairly satisfied.
Are you satisfied with the state response to COVID-19 led by Governor Greg Abbott over their last couple of years?
I'm going to pass on that one.
You'll pass?
Yeah.
How do you feel about the national response to COVID-19 led by President Donald Trump in the year 2020 and then by President Joe Biden from 2021 to present?
In 2020, I think there was a lot of misinformation. For example, the drugs that should be used, saying that it was a joke or a hoax, blaming another country for, the virus, giving it a racist name. So yeah, I wasn't very satisfied. At the turn of 2021, it was a little different. It seems like they were actually trying to do more research. What I was looking for. Giving us more hope that it was actually going to end. So I think that's the difference. That one said it was a joke, a hoax, and then the other one kind of no, it is for real. Let's try to see how we can overcome it and come out of it.
All right, thank you for your response. If you had the power of a political office to respond to COVID-19, what would you do differently?
I have no idea. think I'm gonna pass on that one, so.
This is a special year in our national democracy because it's a midterm election voting year. Do you plan to vote? If so, is the issue of COVID-19 going to factor into your votes?
I do plan on voting, and I don't think that it will affect the way that I vote.
Okay. Will you consider the national response to COVID-19 pandemic in your vote for a presidential candidate?
I don't think I
Is there anything else you would like to share with me about your experiences with COVID-19 that I have not asked about?
No, I think I've answered pretty much everything that I needed to say, I guess.
Thank you, Mrs. Guerrero, for sharing your stories with me, the Voces of a Pandemic Oral History Project.